Have you ever wondered if parents are interchangeable? If there's really a difference between a mom and a dad, or if there's just this thing called parenting that we both do kind of in unison? Well, today in the Celebrate Kids podcast, in our daily segment, Facing the Dark, we're going to look at this topic of if moms actually matter in a different way that dads actually matter. And does it matter if our kids have friends who have two moms or two dads? And how should we talk to them about that? Let's turn now to Dr. Kathy Koch for some insight.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So, Dr. Kathy, researchers from the University of Leeds analyzed data from a survey of almost 5,000 households in the UK that include a mother and a father. And they kind of linked the relationship between a mother and father to an academic study. They found that fathers' childcare involvement has a unique and important effect on the educational outcomes of children that is over and above the effect of the mother's involvement. The report said that, quote, father's involvement operates differently from mother's involvement because it helps to increase children's educational attainment, whereas a mother's involvement enhances children's cognitive behavior, end quote. They went on to say that, quote, specifically mother's involvement helps to reduce hyperactivity in children and to enhance their peer socialization skills, as well as their emotional, conduct, and pro-social behaviors, end quote. So Dr. Kathy, friends from ours at the Colson Center, I know that John Stone Street's one of them, have said that there's no such thing as parenting. There's only mothering and fathering. What do you kind of make of this study, knowing that mothers and fathers have really a unique role in kids' development, especially with education?
Yeah, it isn't surprising. And I've always been intrigued by John Stone Street's statement about that. I need to remember that. I'm glad you reminded me of that because I do talk about the general parenting. I think it's one of the, this points out again, the unique differences, how moms and dads lead their children and how sons and daughters respond to the leadership of the male and the female in the home. It's one of the reasons that the data is clear that children do best when raised in a home with both an involved mom and an involved dad. And so I think it's a good reminder for us. And I think it also says to those who are listening who are single parents that they can then make sure that they put on themselves this additional role. So if there's a mom listening to us and the research says that the mom is, best at reducing hyperactivity, enhancing peer socialization, et cetera, but the father's involvement is super helpful with educational attainment, then we need to say to our single moms, hey, make sure that you're also, asking different questions about academics and making sure that your sons and daughters know that you care deeply about not just their friends, but about their scores. And I can't imagine that's not happening, but I think it's intriguing. It's good to point it out.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of add to that because there's a reality for me that we had a friend that was a single mom and she asked me to kind of step in and not to be a dad, but really to be a male presence in her kids' lives. So I became kind of the manny, and that's actually how I met my wife. It's kind of a funny story, and it's really fun to tell. But there's a reality there that, in some of those situations, maybe you bring another kind of mentor to kind of walk alongside them, which kind of leads me to this next question, because I have often wonder what kind of happens when parents tell their kids that they're kind of focusing on them in a different way. You kind of mentioned about that idea with single moms to maybe say, we're going to kind of focus on how we can drive some of the academic engagement. What does that do for a kid when a mom or a dad kind of says, hey, I'm going to kind of focus on you? Is it good to kind of let our kids know that we're, focusing on them and maybe even giving up things like watching the football game or different things that we kind of like to do? Does it kind of put a weight on the kids when they hear that mom and dad are saying, hey, I really want to spend this time with you, and it's going to be directed time where we're going to work on homework together because I really want you to kind of grow in this academic achievement? Or does that, when we say that, really make the kids have this unfair expectation of what they should get out of the time that we spend with them? What are your thoughts on that?
That's really fascinating. It's probably both end. Probably depends a bit on the age and the stage of the children and the quality relationship they have and kind of what drives their motivational perspective. I do think that it's valuable for parents to let kids know that they're sacrificing. Not, I'm sacrificing because you run the world. I'm sacrificing because you're the center of the universe. No, God is the center of the universe. But I'm sacrificing because I've chosen to be a mom and a dad, and you matter to me. And these are critical, important years. So did you notice that I put down, my phone, I put down that book. I stopped, watching that show to come over here and sit with you and help you. That's because of the depth of my love for you. We also don't want kids to think that the world revolves around them. So it is a really interesting balance, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is an challenging balance.
Yes,
as a
I bet.
parent, especially with, multiple kids. We have 8. And so I tell my wife sometimes, I just come home and I just want every kid to have at least like a 30-second time with dad or a 30-minute time with dad. But by the time that I get done, I'm so like exhausted. And I kind of have to get to that place of like, okay, I'm going to tell them that I'm spending time with them. So I've often kind of wondered that. Do we kind of step into that? But that leads me to another conversation that I had with some of my kids the other night, because inevitably, more than likely within our listener base too, there are kids who have friends who have, kind of quote unquote 2 mommies or quote unquote 2 daddies, right? And I'm not really one to kind of be overly sensitive about those things, because I do think it's really important that our kids understand that moms actually do a thing and dads actually do a thing, and they're unique. And I think it's important for our kids to kind of understand that and know that, because so much of society and culture, I think, kind of pushes this idea of, moms might be interchangeable, or dads can kind of have, somebody that steps in. And so we kind of run into different situations inside a culture where there may be 2 men who want to have a child. And so one of them kind of says, well, I'm taking on the mommy role here. And personally, I don't think that that's actually a thing. I don't know that a man can kind of step into that in the same way. Is there a good approach that we should have with our kids when we're kind of talking about this, especially these things about the roles and the importance of kind of having a mother figure or a female role model in your life and a father figure or a male role model in your life, without maybe kind of, I don't want to say like kind of humbly critiquing the realities of some of our kids' friends, but is there kind of a step that we can take here to help them kind of navigate through that? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's complicated, isn't it? I appreciate the question. I think that, one of our passions has to be compassion and empathy for families who are in these situations. We certainly don't want children being raised in the classic, mom, dad, 2.5 kid and a dog family to be loudly judgmental toward others. But even the example of your friend who is a single mom who asked you to engage with children as a male influence. Why do we do that? Because we know there's a benefit of the male influence. And why would a single dad want an aunt or a friend to step in? Because we know there's a benefit of, the female influence upon both boys and girls. I think it's critically important. I would encourage parents to go back to scripture, where God defines family and says that this is best. And there is data to suggest it's best. So if you've got preteens and teens and they're beginning to critique culture and even think of what they want their future to hold, maybe you even study, especially if you're a homeschool parent, that can become, the lesson of the week. And you study data and you figure out the bias of the publication and where was the author coming from, and, is it legit and is it right? And I think for people who are listening who are in this beautiful situation as you and Nancy are, or you and your wife are, where you have the mom and the dad, you take on the role and you also do what you're called to do. I don't know if I've told you this story before, but I was a dancer as a child. I enjoyed tap and ballet, acrobatic and jazz. Tap was my favorite. One of my Christmas gifts one year when I was in the elementary school was season tickets to the Milwaukee Ballet. And so I don't remember now if it was once a month or once every 6 weeks or so. We would go downtown and park in the big building and dress up, of course, and go downtown and park in the big parking structure and go and watch a ballet. And guess what? My dad went 1 month and my mom went the next. And I look back on that today and think that was strategically brilliant, that I didn't enjoy ballet just with my mom, but my dad wanted to enjoy ballet with me. He wanted to understand that part of me that liked to float through the air. And I will always remember that was a sacrifice for him. I know it was. And you know what that was? That was love.
As Dr. Kathy was talking, it reminded me of a proverb that I think is really important to share for us. It comes out of Proverbs chapter 23, beginning at verse 17. And this is what Solomon wrote. Listen to your father who gave you life, and do not despise your mother when she is old. Buy the truth and do not sell it, wisdom and instruction and insight as well. The father of a righteous child has great joy. A man who fathers a wise son also rejoices in him. May your father and mother rejoice. May she who gave birth to you be joyful. And I think this is an encouragement for us as parents, that our call is not just simply to be a parent, to kind of guide a kid, but it's actually to be a father, to guide our kids in a specific way that a father is mindful of. In the same way it goes for a mother. If your call is to mother, your call is to really guide kids in a unique and special way. And likewise, if your call is to be a mentor, it's really to be a mentor in a special way, in a way that is distinct from being a mother and a father. Sometimes I think it's important for us in these times, especially these cultural moments, to take a step back and understand the unique privilege that God has given us in the lives of the kids around us. I think recognizing that privilege and then understanding what our role is in kind of guiding kids to understand who they are, to have a solid understanding of their identity, and to know how God has created them. I think doing that in our specific, unique ways is really a bright light that shines and cuts through the confusion and the darkness of this time, to think that people are just kind of interchangeable. We know that God has put all of us here on purpose, with a purpose, for a purpose. May you live into that, especially today, but as you also continue with us throughout the rest of this week. I want to thank you for listening to the Celebrate Kids podcast in this, our daily segment, Facing the Dark. On behalf of Dr. Kathy Koch, my name is Wayne Stender, and I'm really looking forward to spending this week with you here on the podcast.